Hi there, I'm Skaji. I'm a practicing witch and a professional tarot nerd, and I'm glad you're here. Oh, hi Gary. How are you today?
I'm great, Skaji. I'm amazing.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, guess what?
What?
I'm a wizard.
Really? I can see that. That's neat. What kinds of wizard...
Wizard.
Oh, sorry. What kinds of wizard things do you do?
I can throw fireballs and fly and wizard things.
That's cool. Is it fun?
Yep.
I'll bet. Gary, I thought today that I'd talk about...
Wanna see?
See what?
Wizard things.
Oh, sure.
Okay, watch out. My power is powerful power.
I'm watching out.
Bra Candabia.
What happened, Gary?
Well, presto changeo.
I guess the spells just take time to kick in, huh?
Yeah, 'cause I'm a wizard.
I believe you. I'll keep an eye out for your spells. Today, I thought we'd talk about...
Skaji,
Yes, Gary?
how did I learn to be a real wizard?
Oh, you want to be a real wizard?
Wizard.
Ah, you want to be a real wizard.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's actually what I wanted to talk about today. The kinds of things that I suggest to folks when they decide they want to learn magic.
Ooh, and be a wizard.
And be a wizard, or a witch, or whatever name they would like to use for their magic using selves. When I'm talking to folks about magic, I tell them there are 4 foundational skills that I think are necessary to get started with: centering, grounding, shielding, and cleansing. These are all skills which help us to concentrate our energy and the energy of the world around us for use in our magic.
Skaji,
Yes?
what's energy?
Oh, that's a good question, Gary. Energy is a term you're going to hear tossed around a lot in discussions of magic and spells, and it can be confusing. You see, there's more than one definition of energy, lots more. We have the definitions, yes, more than one, of energy as used by physicists, and then there are the definitions, yes, again, more than one, used in metaphysics. The definition of energy from my physics classes, as much as I can remember at any rate, is the capacity of doing work.
We're doing science now. I'm not good at science.
Don't be silly, Gary. Of course you are. All of us do science, all the time.
You?
Sure. Science isn't a subject. It's asking questions and looking for answers.
I ask lots of questions.
You sure do. And that's one of the things that I love about you. You see, the scientific method is just a special way of asking questions and seeking answers. And we do that a lot, all of us. We just may not be as rigorous in our methods as, say, a chemist or a physicist. Metaphysics, on the other hand, is a branch of philosophy that asks the really big questions. Stuff like, what is reality? What is the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything?
42.
That's the answer, Gary, but not the question. So the way we use energy in a magical sense is a more metaphysical use and less a physics use, but there is some overlap. The capacity of doing work. Now we'll need one more physics definition here to kind of link everything together. Work, in a basic sense, is to set or keep in motion operation or activity. To cause to operate or produce. Work, in this way, is change. In Magic in Theory and Practice by Aleister Crowley, we find the most widely used and adapted definition of magic out there. Magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will.
Science again?
But there's art too. You're good at art.
I do like crayons.
Me too, Gary. Mr. Crowley summed it up nicely in his definition. Energy in the magical sense is the capacity to cause change in conformity with will. Now, that word will might be worth a whole video, but for now, let's move on.
What does will have to do with it?
We're moving on, Gary.
I know a guy named Will.
I do too, but that's not what we mean here.
He's not mean.
I know, but we need to get to the next part.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. If you'd like to go into more depth in all this, you might enjoy Real Energy by Phaedra and Isaac Bonewits. The physics in the book might be a little bit dated, but the magical stuff is neat. Real science types often cringe when we magic-y types borrow their sacred words like energy and work and dimethyltryptamine.
Try what now?
Dimethyltryptamine. It's a molecule, but we don't have to worry about that right now. What I mean is that I tend to use the sacred words of science as metaphors for metaphysical ideas in ways that make sense to me.
Oh, okay.
Where was I?
Right there in the chair.
Oh, thanks, Gary. Energy in the magical sense is that sublime something which we as practitioners can access, move, channel, and direct to affect change in our lives.
Like fireballs.
Not really, but I find it fun to believe that out there somewhere there's a practitioner with enough juice to chunk a fireball or two. But for the rest of us, we'll have to settle for smaller and less flashy kinds of things.
Oh.
The 4 fundamental skills I mentioned earlier, centering, grounding, shielding, and cleansing, are all related to our use of energy and describe skills practitioners use to concentrate, focus, and move that magical energy. Words are wonderful things, and they're also frustrating as hell. If I say dog, I would guess most English speakers would have the same general idea. But I would also guess that not a single one of them would have the same idea of dog in their head that's in mine. The first thing that comes to mind for me when I hear the word dog are memories of beloved childhood pets. When we talk about more abstract things, language can be even more confusing. The terms centering, grounding, shielding, and cleansing in the magical context are just such abstract terms. All of them can and frequently do mean very different things to different folks. I'd like for you to keep this in mind as I dig into what are my own thoughts on these skills. And they are skills, just like driving a car is a skill, or playing an instrument, or making videos,
Or making cookies.
or making cookies. If you search the net for centering, you'll find lots and lots and lots of pages, all of which have nothing to do with magical practice. And if you search for centering magic, you'll find lots and lots and lots and lots of pages which are related to magical practice. But the interesting thing to me is that many of these sites are talking about the same thing. You see, these skills have practical applications outside of our magic and can be very useful in our regular, everyday lives. When I'm preparing for my videos, I like going through my personal library and pulling out books I haven't looked at in a while and review some salient points. For me, it's like going through a box of stored treasures. There's a sense of nostalgia involved with dusting off those old hoary memories and polishing them up again. So I pulled a few books off the shelf and began searching for sections on centering. Much to my surprise, I found only one book with a section concerning centering, at least titled Centering. One book. Out of hundreds. I was surprised. And this book was the previously mentioned Real Energy, and it was published in 2007. but I'd been hearing about centering for many years prior to that. That left me wondering where I got the information that I do have on this. Not only have I used this term for a very long time, I've heard it used by others for a long time too. Centering is a skill for magical practice, simply put, is concentrating our focus, our attention, and our energy. Now, I don't know about you, but my brain is usually kind of scattered. I've got all these things running around in there. Do I have meetings at work today? Is my son going to be hard to wake up for school today? What's for dinner? What's the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? What is centering? Centering is when we take our typically unfocused and distracted mind and focus it on something. It's as simple as that. Lifting a really big rock is simple too, but that don't mean it's easy. You see, our usual state is unfocused, and it takes practice to develop focus. All kinds of folks develop the skill of centering, of focusing. Athletes, martial artists, musicians, artists, you get the point. But for magical practice, we have to understand something else about focus, too. We humans, as spiritual beings in a meat suit, have a field of energy about us which is generated by our own spiritual nature, whatever that means. This field is most commonly called the aura, and there are many terms for our spiritual energy: chi, prana, mana, Ode, Pneuma, Ruach, and many others. Just like our minds, which are usually unfocused, so too is our energy. In many ways, the two are connected and mirror one another. Centering allows us to focus our energy on a task as well.
Stodgy,
Yes, Gary?
this is on me, but how do I center?
Oh, right, that would be helpful to know, wouldn't it?
A little bit.
While centering is a skill we use as needed, it is something we need to practice. For me, the most effective practice is that of meditation. Now, there are lots and lots of different kinds and styles of meditation, just like there are different kinds of hammers.
Stop!
What is it?
Hammer time!
Really?
I couldn't help myself.
I understand. The kind of meditation I'm referring to here, though, is called mindfulness meditation. There's a lot more information available these days on meditation and meditation practices in general, and mindfulness meditation specifically, than we had just a few years ago. Medical and mental health researchers have begun to pay attention to what spiritual people have known for a very long time. Our minds and spirits are capable of really nifty things if we just train ourselves. You see, our minds are like puppies. Imagine...
I like puppies.
Me too. Have you ever tried to train a puppy?
Sure.
It takes time, doesn't it? Imagine that we're training a puppy to sit on command. We set the puppy down and tell him to sit, and then he wanders off. So we pick him up, set him down again, and say, sit. And he wanders off again.
Maybe he wants a cookie.
Oh, I'm sure he does. But to get him to sit, we have to patiently show and tell him what to do over and over again. And as time goes on, our puppy friend will sit for longer and longer before wandering off. You see, our minds are just like that puppy. When we first start our meditative practice, our mind will wander off easily. But we have to be patient with ourselves and sit and sit and sit. With practice, our mind will sit for longer and longer. And when our minds wander, we can't get mad at ourselves. We just have to return ourselves to the starting place. That starting place is the thing we're choosing to focus on. I find the simplest to be focusing on my breath, just being mindful of my natural breath as it moves within my body. Breath in, breath out. Breath in. Do we have any cookies? Oh, that's a thought. Breath in, breath out.
We're out.
Huh?
We're out of cookies.
Oh. Our breath isn't the only thing we can focus on. There are mantras, sounds we make, mudras, gestures we make. You can focus on a candle flame or even a lava lamp. The key is to focus on a something, and when our mind wanders, then we return to our focus. And a critical part of this practice is to be kind to ourselves when our minds do inevitably wander. We let that thought pass right on by without judging it or ourselves. Many of the folks I talk to about meditation, and it comes up more often than you might think, many folks say to me, I try to meditate. Oh, that's your first mistake. I tell them, there's no try. Meditation is not a destination. Meditation is a journey. Let's say you sit to meditate and you fall asleep. Big deal. It doesn't mean that you're bad at meditating. It just means you need some sleep. Cutting ourselves some slack when our minds wander is a big part of the exercise. And as you develop those meditating muscles, you'll also develop a greater sense of objectivity about your own thoughts. Bringing ourselves to our center draws our personal energy in and concentrates it, which is really handy when we're fixing to do some magic.
And throw fireballs.
Sure, I figure it would take lots of focus to throw a fireball. All this focus and a sense of personal objectivity not only helps us concentrate our minds and energy, but can also reduce regular old everyday stress. The next foundational skill we need to talk about is grounding.
I got grounded once.
Did?
Yeah,
How did you become grounded?
I ate all the cookies.
What? I couldn't hear you.
I ate all the cookies and Granny said I'm grounded.
Oh, I see. Did you learn your lesson?
Yep, now I don't eat all the cookies.
Oh, that's good.
Now I eat one cookie.
I'm glad you learned your lesson, but that's not the kind of grounding that I'm talking about here. Some writers on magical things discuss grounding and centering as a single practice, but I see grounding as a separate skill. When I think about grounding, it's in the metaphorical framework of electricity and electric circuits, and it's all about making connections. A particularly good working or ritual, or even a game of D&D or a great concert, they can all leave us feeling excited, and there's nothing wrong with that. What's happening in those cases is we have some excess energy. When it comes to magical energy, it's a good idea to release that extra stuff. In her book, The Natural Psychic, author Ellen Dugan talks about psychic hangovers. When we've moved a bunch of energy, it can, after the initial buzz has worn off, it can leave us feeling drained and scattered. My first true experience with this was after the very first psychic fair I participated in. That day, over the course of about 8 hours, I did more than 30 readings. And after all that, I couldn't think straight. I could barely even make whole sentences, and everything was sore, just like I'd been working out in the garden all day. I really needed to ground. And what I did was go home, go to bed, and sleep. It took me a couple of days before I felt like myself again. Over the years, I've developed some techniques to help me in those situations, and I've done a lot of work on grounding, too. Grounding is making connections to the wider spiritual universe, and when we're fully connected, we have a lot more energy to draw on and a place to let it go back to again. We become part of a spiritual circuit, if you don't mind me mixing my metaphors.
I like petty fours.
What?
Little French cookies.
Not petty-fours, Gary. Metaphors.
Oh.
Our metaphor of an electric circuit can help us understand how I think of the purpose of grounding. In one way, it's a lightning rod, which can direct excess energy back into the spiritual universe. The connection which grounding practices facilitate can also be used to draw in energy from that same spiritual source, just like we were plugging into an electrical outlet. In real energy, The Bonewits described these two connected functions as taking excess energy and diverting it, and the drawing up of energy. There have been various methods described by different authors. One I think that's easiest to visualize is that of imagining ourselves growing roots which reach down into the earth as though we were a tree. And add to this the image of our branches reaching upwards towards the sun. And in this way, we draw in energy as a tree draws in water from below and light from above. Real energy describes the connection to the earth as almost literal. One is sending excess energy and also drawing energy from the planet Earth itself, and I suppose that's a part of it. But I conceive of these connections as being primarily spiritual in nature. I think we're not connecting per se to the physical world, but instead to the spiritual world. In the skills of centering and grounding, we have techniques which help us to manage our own energy as well as the energy which passes through us from the outside. The next two skills, shielding and cleansing, help us to manage unwanted or outside energies. Shielding is, at its very basic level, simply developing barriers to prevent the incursion of unwanted energies into our own energy field, our aura. We've all done this at one time or another, even if we weren't aware of it. Have you ever been standing in line at the grocery store and had that vague, way too close kind of feeling? Then you turn around and you find that the person behind you is almost standing in your shoes. And then you take a couple of steps away and that feeling lessens. What you were feeling was that rude person's aura bumping right up against yours. Energetically speaking, personal space is a real thing, and when you stepped away from them, you sort of shielded, in a passive kind of way.
Hey, look it, I got a shield.
Oh, that's a nice shield, Gary. And your shield can help us think about energetic shielding.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and one of the ways we can develop our shielding skills is to think about it like it was a literal armor. We simply visualize ourselves protected by a full suit of armor.
And a shield.
And a shield too. And this armor will help protect us from energy we don't want. But a word of warning. We don't want to leave our shields up all the time because
they get stinky.
What, Gary?
When I wear my night costume too long, it gets stinky.
Oh, right. I remember that. Not pleasant. And I suppose stinky might help us to understand why we don't want to keep our shields up all the time. For one thing, holding on to that visualization can be draining if we do it for too long. Now, as we practice, we'll get better at it and we can hold our shields up longer and longer. And having our shields up will keep out energy we might want, as well as energy we don't want. To help me manage all this, I came up with a couple of different kinds of shields. One is a more day-to-day kind of thing. It's a screen door. And my screen door shield is just like it sounds. It'll let in good stuff while keeping out some stuff I don't want. But it isn't good when there's lots of energy, maybe that I want to keep away. Those times I have the shields I visualize using an image from my favorite TV show. You know the show I'm talking about. There's these people on these ships kind of traveling around in the universe, flying between the stars on a kind of journey. You might even say it's a trek.
Shields up, Captain.
Exactly. I visualize myself surrounded by a rigid and impenetrable force field which deflects and dissipates energy coming my way. Now, these visualizations work for me because my brain is weird.
Aye, Captain.
Your brain might enjoy different visualizations, like being inside of a sphere of golden energy, or like
Wearing a night costume.
Or like that. When my son was small, he loved the Ferris hero in the red armor, and he'd occasionally wander about blasting things. And you could even visualize something like that. The best visualizations are those which you feel right down to your center.
Dodgy?
Yes, Gary?
What's a visualization?
Oh, yeah. Visualization is one technique we can use to help us direct our energy. It would take more time than we have today, really, to get into it. So for now, just think of it as starting with our imagination.
Okay.
Shielding then as a skill is simply using some of our energy to keep unwanted energy away, and there are several different tools we can use to practice that skill. Our next foundational skill is cleansing. We would use this skill if we needed to kind of clean up our energy, or even the energy of someone else if they ask us to. And objects and spaces, they can be cleansed too. And cleansing is just what it sounds like. It's cleaning things up. We all need to clean things up from time to time, don't we, Gary?
I don't know what you mean.
When is the last time that you cleaned your room?
I know you were talking to me, but none of the words are making sense.
Right. When we're talking about our own personal energy, grounding can be used to get rid of stuff, but sometimes we just need to break out the soaps and the washcloths and really clean. Of the 4 foundational skills, cleansing might be the easiest to think about, and you've probably already done some cleansing stuff yourself. Of the 4, it's the most commonly known, even by folk who don't work magic in any other way. And it's the one, I think, which has the most tools in the toolbox.
Stop. Hammer time.
I think almost everybody has heard of white sage. And there's Florida water and stones. So many stones.
Like Keith Richards.
What I mean here, Gary, are rocks.
Keith Richards rocks.
Yes, he does, but forever and ever. But I'm talking about things like selenite and hematite and other cleansing stones. All these things are great, and it can make it easier to cleanse, but you know, we can cleanse without all that stuff. In fact, cleansing works best if we put our backs into it, metaphorically speaking. We can use our own energy to cleanse things, even ourselves, although this can sometimes be more difficult, and it takes more practice. If you've ever seen an energy worker after, well, they were working, you might see them shaking their hands like this, down by their sides, out in front, all around. What they're doing is cleansing by shaking off those unwanted energies, letting them go back to the earth.
Employees must wash hands before returning to work.
Exactly, that's right, Gary. And it's not the only way to do it. We might start by visualizing a cool breeze flowing through us and blowing away those unwanted energies. Or you can imagine rain coming down and washing away those energies. There's no one right way, just the way that works for you. Yeah, the herbs and the incenses and the waters are great, but they work best when we also put our own energy into the process too. And regular cleansing of ourselves and our spaces is a great idea also.
So we don't get stinky.
Metaphorically speaking, that's exactly right.
I'm Gary.
Huh?
My name is Gary, not Malfoy Callie.
All right. Sorry. Regular cleansing can go a long way to keeping our energy up and feeling good. I feel like centering, grounding, shielding, and cleansing are the 4 most basic and most fundamental skills that should be learned and practiced for anyone who wants to learn to use magic.
I'm a real wizard now.
Wow, look at that. Jeez. Gary. Please don't throw the fireballs in the office.
Oh.
Thank you. Well, Gary and I are really glad you've spent some time with us here today.
Yeah, you're awesome.
If you've enjoyed yourself, Please like, subscribe, share, and even comment. I'm Skaji.
I'm Gary.
Safe journeys. And for me, the most effective practice is that of dip. Where's the fire extinguisher?